Tonight, on First at 9 this Friday, the 7th of November 2025. A citizen's budget. President vows to usher in pre-crisis economic levels by the end of this year. Further asserts all set to service foreign debt due in 2028. Unsatisfied. Opposition leader disparages budget 2026 as one ungrounded in reality. Need 8 billion rupees to fund plantation workers' wages, claims MP Mano Ganesan. Amendments incoming. More investments to be ushered in with amendments to the Port City Act and the Strategic Development Projects Act. Decisive conviction. 20-year-old Sri Lankan convicted of brutal killing of 6 Sri Lankans in Ottawa.
Kalin baby so rupial 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on the Derana News channel. I'm Aditya Drisingha joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world, brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms, recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now in a top story tonight, President Anura Dissanayake presented the 2026 budget in Parliament today, setting out Sri Lanka's roadmap for fiscal consolidation and sustainable economic growth. While delivering the budget speech, the President emphasized the government's capability of restoring fiscal and macroeconomic stability within a short span of time and reassured continued macroeconomic and social stability in the years ahead. He asserted that the country is expected to reach pre-economic crisis levels by the end of 2025. Meanwhile, the head of state revealed that Sri Lanka is well on the way to achieving debt sustainability with a program to reduce the debt to GDP ratio to 95%.
Cabinet ministers convened at the Parliament this afternoon at around 1 p.m. to attend the presentation of the 2026 budget, marking the 80th budget of Sri Lanka. President Anura Dissanayake entered the Parliament at approximately 1:30 p.m. carrying the budget proposal. In his dual capacity as President and Minister of Finance, Anura Dissanayake presented the second budget of the National People's Power Government to Parliament today. This year's budget is themed the 2026 Citizens' Budget.
At
the time we took on this challenge, the country's economic foundation had been shaken. The entire economy was facing a serious crisis due to decades of macroeconomic instability and fiscal imbalances, structural inefficiencies and governance weaknesses. This put our people under severe pressure. Therefore, from the moment we received our mandate, we initiated a wide-ranging reform process to stabilize the economy, ensure fiscal discipline, strengthen state institutions, put an end to corruption, increase transparency and ensure accountability to the people. I am pleased to inform this House today that these reforms have restored fiscal, macroeconomic and social stability within a short span of 1 year. The public does not need to have any doubts or concerns of the economy being unstable again. The economy grew by 4.8% in the first half of 2025, driven by strong growth across all sectors of the economy. This is well above the forecasts of multilateral organizations. The government anticipates to maintain inflation below 5%. The exchange rate remained stable and the external sector, including imports and exports, also strengthened despite global shocks. Gross official reserves have exceeded $6 billion, driven by strong exports, tourism and remittance inflows. By the end of this year, we aim to increase this amount to at least $7 billion. Government revenue is expected to reach 16% of GDP this year, the first time in nearly 2 decades since 2006. We also expect to record the highest primary surplus in history this year, significantly exceeding the target of 2.3% of GDP. Off the back of these developments, we have been able to build peaceful relations with international partners and build investor confidence like never before. Strengthening domestic revenue collection, digitizing revenue administration and streamlining public expenditure have enabled us to report a high primary surplus. The continuous increase in this primary surplus surplus will contribute to a significant reduction in central government debt as a percentage of GDP from 114.2% in 2022 to 96.8% by 2026. Furthermore, central government debt as a percentage of GDP is expected to reach a level of about 87% by 2030. Therefore, the gates to overcoming the debt crisis have been opened wide. Sri Lanka's economic crisis was one that brewed for a very long time. The domino effect of the crisis led all sectors of the economy to turmoil without exception. The end result was that we were declared a bankrupt state by April 2022. This declaration of bankruptcy set our nation back by a decade, since forecasts indicate that it would take 10 years for us to make our way out of bankruptcy. Many believe that it would take until 2029 to reach the economy that existed in 2019. Notwithstanding those projections, we will be able to achieve pre-crisis economic levels by 2025. Our debt restructuring process is almost complete. Sri Lanka has put itself on a sustainable fiscal path and has further strengthened the confidence of domestic and international investors. As a result of this progress, international rating agencies such as Fitch Ratings, Moody's and S&P have upgraded the country's sovereign ratings to CCC+, CAA1 and CCC+, respectively. We anticipate to restructure the debt of Sri Lankan Airlines, which now stands at $210 million before December this year. We are currently establishing an investor-friendly environment while also experiencing a progress in investments. In 2023, foreign direct investments stood at $737 million. By 2024, this amount dropped to $614 million. However, by end September this year, the country received FDIs worth $823 million. With reference to the port city, we have approved projects worth $1.3 billion. Both the Strategic Development Projects Act and the Port City Act are being amended to provide tax incentives based on transparent and rules-based criteria. Our main strategic objective is to achieve an economic growth rate exceeding 7% within the next few years, ensuring that the benefits of such growth are shared equally among all communities and social groups spread island-wide. Efforts are being made to diversify exports, improve export competitiveness, connect with global value chains, capture new markets as well as expand the existing markets with the aim of enhancing the country's export growth in accordance with the National Export Development Plan 2025 to 2029. A committee of experts have been appointed to review existing trade agreements and to negotiate new free trade agreements to further expand our export markets. We also intend to introduce a new tariff policy to set up the necessary financial facilities for new goods and service exports and to establish a trade national single window. In 2022, the IMF stated that Sri Lanka's debt was unsustainable. Now we have implemented a definite plan to ensure Sri Lanka's debt sustainability. We will establish a public debt management office. As Sri Lanka's credit ratings have been upgraded, the government is moving systematically and steadily along a clear path to achieve debt sustainability, maintaining the gross financial requirement at a level below 13% of GDP in the medium term and annual central government foreign currency debt servicing at a level not exceeding 4.5% of GDP is a strategy to ensure debt sustainability. We are gradually reaching the goal of securing the public debt target at 95% of GDP by 2032. Given the remarkable performance achieved in public finances and our debt management strategy, we believe that there is a high level of potential to maintain public debt as a percentage of GDP below 90% by 2032. Certain groups have been spreading an unfounded allegation that an inability to pay foreign debt may arise in 2028. What is the reality? We made a payment of $1,674 million for foreign debt servicing in 2024. Foreign debt servicing this year stood at $2,435 million. $1,948 million of that amount was paid by September. We are ready to pay another $487 million by 31st of December this year. Accordingly, the hike in foreign debt service payments in 2025 corresponds to an increase of $760 million compared to 2024. Foreign debt service payments in 2028 will amount only to $3,259 million. We will have the capacity to pay this amount. A portion of international sovereign bonds obtained by the government has been classified as governance-linked bonds. They should be repaid in 2034 and 2035. Creditors have agreed to provide relief in the debt restructuring process depending on the progress that Sri Lanka achieves on two indicators during the debt restructuring process. Accordingly, the government's revenue target for 2026 to 2027 2027 should be maintained above 15.3% and 15.4% of GDP respectively, while the fiscal strategy should be announced within the stipulated time frame. If these targets are met, the creditors have agreed to provide a 0.75% reduction in the annual interest rate payable from 2028 to 2035. Accordingly, the government will receive a debt servicing benefit of $7.6 million per year. The government is working to achieve these economic targets. We will not abandon any one of these targets. We are systematically and efficiently increasing government revenue. The Inland Revenue Department is being modernized through the implementation of the RAMIS 3.0. We intend to increase state revenue to 20% of GDP in the long term. We further anticipate to gradually adjust the direct to indirect tax ratio from the existing 25 to 75 ratio to 40 to 60 ratio to ensure a more progressive and equitable tax system. We are implementing a number of tax reforms to reach this goal. We will maintain primary expenditure within the 13% limit and maintain public investment at a minimum of 4% of GDP to strengthen social safety nets of vulnerable communities in the country.
Accordingly, the total government revenue projected for 2026 stands at 5,300 billion rupees, while total expenditure is estimated at 7,057 billion rupees, resulting in a budget deficit of 1,757 billion rupees. The debate on the budget's second reading is set to commence tomorrow and will continue until November 14th, with the vote on the second reading scheduled for 6 p.m. on the same day. Subsequently, the third reading of the budget will take place from November 15th to December 5th, culminating in the final vote at 6 p.m. on December 5th.
Now, according to the budget estimates of 2026, Sri Lanka's economy is projected to grow by 4 to 5% in 2026, which also anticipates a significant improvement in fiscal performance and public revenue. Government revenue is expected to rise to over 15.4% of GDP, supported largely by value-added tax, external trade taxes and excise duties. Total revenues for 2026 is estimated at 5,305 billion rupees, of which 4,850 billion rupees will come from tax income and 455 billion rupees from non-tax sources and grants. Non-tax income includes interest earnings, rents, dividends, profits and various fees and charges. On the expenditure side, the government expects total spending, including debt servicing, to amount to 8,980 billion rupees. Of this, 4,495 billion rupees has been allocated for debt servicing, comprising 2,617 billion rupees for interest payments and discounts and 1,878 billion rupees for loan repayments. Primary expenditure covering all expenses including interest and debt repayments is projected at 4,805 billion rupees, distributed among salaries and wages, pensions, other recurrent expenses and capital expenditure. The government aims to maintain total expenditure at 20.5% of GDP, with public investment steady at 4% of GDP. The budget deficit is expected to be contained at 5.1% of GDP, while the government targets a primary surplus of 2.5% of GDP, marking a key milestone in its fiscal consolidation efforts.
ඔබේ සම හඳුනාගෙන ඖෂධීය ශාකසාරමය forever face wash එකක් භාවිතා කරන්න.
අප වෙනුවෙන් කැපවූ ලංකාවේ අපේ අංක 1 dialogue.
Focusing on growth that reaches every citizen, government says the budget allocates funding for new investment zones, digital infrastructure and transport development. It was highlighted that Sri Lanka is to commit foreign debt service payments of $487 million by the 31st of December this year, adding that foreign debt servicing has increased by $760 million compared to last year. With that, here's a look at key proposals presented via the 2026 appropriation bill.
As per President Kumara Dissanayaka's 2026 budget speech presented to Parliament today, the government has allocated 5,102,219 billion rupees to the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Meanwhile, 555 billion rupees has been earmarked for the Ministry of Health and Mass Media, with 516,774 million allocated for the healthcare services and 38,226 million for mass media development. 455 billion rupees has been allocated to the Ministry of Defence, including 406,904 million for national security. The government has also set aside 301 billion rupees to fund programs under the Ministry of Education, Higher Education and Vocational Education. As per President Andukumara Dissanayaka's 2026 budget speech presented to Parliament today, 2 new technology parks will be established in Digana and Norelia under the Board of Investment. The Strategic Development Projects Act and the Colombo Port City Economy Commission Act will be amended to ensure tax relief is granted transparently and under strict guidelines. The government has also approved projects worth $1.3 billion within the vicinity of Port City, Colombo. To strengthen existing investment zones, the government has allocated 2 billion rupees to develop auxiliary services zones aimed at enhancing efficiency, expanding provincial economic benefits and integrating SMEs into national value chains. An additional 1 billion rupees has been proposed for this purpose. A further 100 million rupees has been set aside to initiate a single window approval process for Board of Investment projects utilizing digital technology. 250 million rupees will be allocated to formulate a national export development plan with the support of public and private stakeholders and the Asian Development Bank. Another 2.5 billion rupees will go toward improving the Trade National Single Window Facility. In addition, 1 billion rupees will be allocated on top of the existing 4 billion rupee provision for 2026 to manage the establishment and development of industrial zones. The government has also set aside 25 billion rupees to provide concessional loans of up to 25 million rupees for successful businesses and up to 15 million rupees for those facing economic challenges. A further 5.9 billion rupees will be allocated to support small and medium enterprises with loans of up to 50 million rupees each. The government has allocated 80 billion rupees in 2026 for youth entrepreneurship loan schemes, microfinance loans and women entrepreneurship empowerment loan schemes, including refinance loans, grants, pledge loans, collateral-free loans and interest subsidies. It is also proposed to reduce the investment threshold for the existing enhanced capital allowances from $3 million to $250,000 to attract a broader range of investors. In the transport sector, 1 billion rupees has been allocated for the development of the Sigiriya and Trincomalee domestic airports, as well as to expand operations at the Jaffna International Airport. The Civil Aviation Authority is expected to provide additional funding for those developments. Meanwhile, the government has allocated 25.5 billion rupees to drive digital transformation, focusing on expanding infrastructure, streamlining investment processes, and fostering an innovation-friendly environment. Out of this total, 3 billion rupees will be dedicated to next-generation digital infrastructure, including artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and data centers. The government also expects to issue the first national digital identity card by the third quarter of 2026. The government has allocated 6.5 billion rupees to continue the Clean Sri Lanka national initiative aimed at promoting ethical environmental policies and fostering an island-wide moral commitment to cleanliness and sustainability. Meanwhile, 1.5 billion rupees has been set aside to strengthen narcotic control programs under the government's A Nation United national operation. In infrastructure, 342 billion rupees has been allocated for road development in 2026. The program will focus on enhancing road safety, integrating safety features into road design, and improving unsafe road sections. A further 67.2 billion rupees has been allocated for the creation of an efficient and sustainable passenger transport system. Additionally, 85.7 billion rupees will be used to implement drinking water and community water supply projects in several districts including Gampaha, Kalutara, Anuradhapura, Kandy, Jaffna, Kilinochchi and Kurunegala.
Now, opposition lawmakers voiced mixed reactions to the 2026 budget, with several parliamentarians criticizing proposals as lacking strategic direction and failing to address core economic challenges. While some acknowledged positive steps in areas such as digitalization, others dismissed the budget as a continuation of various previous policies without meaningful reform.
අද ඉදිරිපත් කරපු අයවැය මහ පොළොවේ ඉඳගෙන හදපු අයවැයක් නෙවෙයි. අද මේ රටේ ජනතාව තාමත්ම ඛේදනීය තත්ත්වයන් රසකට මුහුණ දෙනවා. දුප්පත්කම වැඩි වෙනවා. විරකියාව වැඩි වෙනවා. ශුද්ධ කුඩා හා මධ්‍ය පරිමාණයේ කර්මාන්තකරුවන්ගේ ජන ජීවිත ගොවියගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට විසඳුම් නැහැ. ඊවර කම්කරු ස්වයං රැකියාලාභින්ගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට බලයට එන්නට පෙර එකක් කියලා බලයට ආවයින් පස්සේ අද සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම ජනතාව අනාථ කරලා තියෙනවා. මේක හරියට ජනතාවට සහන නොලැබෙන IMF එකේ ප්‍රධානියෙක් ලියපු අයවැයක් හැටියටයි මට නම් පේන්නේ. ඒ මොකද දුප්පත්කම තුරන් කිරීම පිළිබඳව පැහැදිලි වැඩ පිළිවෙලක්. ඉතාමත්ම සොච්චම් ප්‍රමාණයක් වෙන් කළ තිබෙන්නේ රටේ ප්‍රගතිය, දියුණුව, ආර්ථික වර්ධනය වෙන්නේ.
තාම සාම්ප්‍රදායික අයවැයක්. මම හිතන්නේ අර රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහතාගේ අයවැය දෙකත් මේ අයවැය දෙකෙත් තියෙන එකම එම රජයේම දිගුවක් තමයි මේ යන්නේ. ඉතින් ඒක බොහොම පැහැදිලි මේ අයවැයනොත් කිසිම උපාය මාර්ගික සැලැස්මක් ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. මේ අයවැයෙන් කොහෙන්වත් දැනෙන්නේ නැහැ මේ රටේ මිනිස්සුන්ට නව අපේක්ෂාවක් ඇති කරන්න ගන්නට පුළුවන් කියලා.
අත වශයෙන්ම සම්පූර්ණම නව ලිබරල් වැඩපිළිවෙලක් තමයි ඉදිරිපත් කරේ. හැබැයි කවුරුත් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ මොකද්ද growth මොමන්ටම් එක කොහොමද මේ growth එක ගේන්නේ කියන්නේ. ඉතින් මෙතන පැටලවිල්ලක් තියෙනවා නව ලිබරල් ක්‍රමය සහ අද ඉදිරිපත් කරපු උන් බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන ප්‍රොඩක්ෂන් ඉකොනොමි එකක් කියන එක ගැන කතා කරන්නේ. ඉතින් ඒතර ලොකු පැටලවිල්ලක් තියෙනවා. ඒකත් අනිත් එක තමයි දැන් බදු ගැන කතා කරනකොට එන අවුරුද්දේ 2027 ඉඳලා දේපොළ බද්ද ගහන එක ගැන කතා කරේ නැහැ. දේවල් කරා හැබැයි එකක් හොඳ දෙයක් තියෙනවා කියන්නේ තමයි මේ ඩිජිටල් කරණය සම්බන්ධයෙන් ලොකු වැඩපිළිවෙලක් ඒගොල්ලෝ පටන් අරන් තියෙනවා. ඒක මම හිතන්නේ බොහෝ දුරට වැදගත් වෙයි ඉස්සරහට යන්න.
ඉතින් අපිට පේනවා හැම පාරම අයවැයට ලස්සනට අවිල්ලා එන්න තොගයක් කිව්වා. ඒකෙන් 131යි 121යි ප්‍රගතිය තියෙන. ඉතින් මේකෙනුත් 180ක් නොවන දේවල් තමයි කතා කරන්නේ. මේවා කතාවට හොඳයි ක්‍රියා කරන්න බෑ.
වදකම් කර ජනතාවගේ වැඩ සම්බන්ධ ජනාධිපතිතුමා 750ක් ගණන් ඇදලා පෙන්නුවා. 200ක් එතුමා දෙනවලු මිලියන් 5000ක් වෙන් කළා තියෙනවා කියලා කියනවා. 5000 මදි ගණන් ඇදලා බැලුවා. අඩුම ගානේ මිලියන් 8000ක් ඕන.
බාගෙන් නැවතලා තිබුණු සංවර්ධන ව්‍යාපෘති කීපයක් නැවත පටන් ගැනීමට උත්සාහ කිරීම පිළිබඳව අපි අගය කරනවා. වැට් බදු හෙවීම සඳහා වූ උපරිමය අඩු කිරීම තුළ සුළු හා මධ්‍යම ව්‍යාපාරිකයන්ට බරක් සිදු වෙනවා කියන එකත් සාමාන්‍ය ජනතාවටත් ඒක බලපායි කියන එකත් ප්‍රශ්නයක්.
පළවෙනි දේ තමයි කියූප ඒවායින් ගොඩක් කලින් ආයෙ කියූපේ කවුරුත් ඉල්ලපු නැති එකක් තමයි දෙන්න යනවා. ඒ තමයි එතුමගේ මන්ත්‍රීවරු 159ට කැප් දෙනවා. තාව දුකෙන් එදිනෙදා කන්නන් දෙන්න තත්ත්වයක ඉන්නවා. ජීවන බර වැඩි වෙලා තමන්ගේ කියලා වාහනයක් ගන්න මධ්‍යම පාන්තිකයෙකුට කොච්චර අමාරුද? ඒ ඔක්කොම තියෙද්දි 159 දෙනාට කැප් බ්‍රෑන්ඩ් නිව් කැප්. මම තියාගෙන මේ විපක්ෂය එල්ලුවේ නෑ කැප්.
The traditional post-budget tea party hosted by the Minister of Finance was held following the budget speech today. President Anukumara Dissanayake, in his capacity as Minister of Finance, hosted this year's tea party. The event was attended by Prime Minister, the Cabinet of Ministers and opposition parliament members, foreign diplomats and other distinguished guests.
Let the world look up to you, shoot what you see, be who you wanna be. Search with a smile, create your own style. Gemini live, make moments come alive. Be anywhere, rock anytime. With awesome AI by your side. Be anywhere, rock anytime. Be brilliant, be always intelligent. Download fast, stream it all night. One tap, move, everything feel right. Snap it clean, edit like a pro. Smarter with Gemini, let the magic flow.
Introducing Samsung Galaxy A17 5G. The power to be always intelligent.
Welcome back. Now, the 20-year-old Sri Lankan national convicted of the brutal killing of 6 Sri Lankans in Ottawa, Canada, has been sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. The gruesome attack, reported from Barhaven in March last year, claimed the lives of 6 individuals, including 5 members of the same family. 6 Sri Lankans, including 5 members of the same family, were brutally murdered at their residence in Barhaven, Ottawa, Canada on the 6th of March 2024. The victims included a 35-year-old Darshani Ekanayaka and her 4 children, 7-year-old Inuka, 4-year-old Ashwini, 3-year-old Ranaya and Kelly, a baby just 2 months old. Garmini Amarakon, a 40-year-old family friend and tenant in their home, was also among the killed. The father of the family, Dhanushka Wickramasinghe, sustained severe injuries but survived the attack. The main suspect, Fabio Di Soisa, who was 19 years old at the time, had been living in the basement of the Vikramasinghe family's rented townhouse in Ottawa. He was taken into custody shortly after the attack. The Sri Lankan student later pled guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 1 count of attempted murder. In court, De Soisa pleaded guilty of committing the gruesome killings, claiming he was under mental stress to the expiration of his student visa. He also gave a detailed account of how the murders were carried out. Investigations later revealed that Fabio De Soisa had purchased the murder weapon, a 38cm long hunting knife, online in January last year. Addressing the court, De Soisa said he had been depressed and suicidal at the time and now must live with the consequences of his actions. Presiding Judge Justice Kevin Phillips sentenced him to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years, describing it as one of the worst crimes in Ottawa's history. Justice Phillips also told De Soisa he had destroyed 2 beautiful families and shaken the community to its core. Leader of Sarvajana Balaya and Member of Parliament Dilith Jayavira inaugurated the Sarvajana Trust, furthering the Sarvajana Balaya's vision of fostering an entrepreneurial state within Sri Lanka. At the Trust's inauguration ceremony, its principal trustee Dilith Jayavira hailed as a national priority the empowerment of women and the youth to achieve their entrepreneurial aspirations.
The Sarvajana Trust, established to further the vision of setting up an entrepreneurial state and a happy nation, was inaugurated yesterday in Colombo. The event was chaired by leader of Sarvajana Balaya MP Dilith Jayavira, who also serves as the principal trustee of the Sarvajana Trust. Foreign diplomats, including the Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, the Chinese Deputy Ambassador, the High Commissioners of Indonesia and the Maldives, the Ambassador of Russia, and diplomatic representatives from Canada, Japan, Thailand, Nepal, and several other nations were among the distinguished guests at the event. A large number of leading industrialists, business leaders, policymakers and public representatives were also in attendance. The Sarvajana Trust aims to support and implement entrepreneurship development, especially for youth and women showing entrepreneurial potential. Its core objectives include providing financial assistance for small business startups, transforming mindsets, encouraging collective participation in building a strong entrepreneurial state, and improving health, nutrition and education standards among underprivileged communities. The Sarvajana Trust, which operates as a public trust, functions on a non-profit basis dedicated to national development through entrepreneurship.
For
a country to truly succeed, it must encourage and actively engage in entrepreneurship. In Sri Lanka, we understand that what holds us back is not the lack of talent, but the lack of opportunity, funds, knowledge, and limited market access. It is this very gap that the Sarvajana Trust aims to bridge. The Sarvajana Trust will be governed with the highest level of transparency. All funds are audited by a team of qualified professionals, and every contribution received will be used solely for the purposes of the trust. Today, the government too has joined the conversation on entrepreneurship. In the past, there was no real discussion on this subject. The focus was mainly on borrowing. Dilith Jayavira has successfully drawn the government's attention to the importance of entrepreneurship. Now, basic infrastructure such as village councils are being established along with the Sarvajana Sabha. Today, we vest the Sarvajana Trust with the people, which will serve as a key impetus in our journey. As you are already aware, one of our main intentions is to foster the positive thinking Sri Lanka needs to inspire and energize our youth and to uplift and empower Sri Lankan women. We intend to adorn Sri Lankan women as generators of wealth. We have travelled from village to village advocating and encouraging this vision. However, we did not have the support of a trust or a legal entity to make this endeavour a success. It is for this purpose that we have established the Sarvajana Trust. Through this initiative, we hope to help you build capital, creativity, knowledge, self-confidence and strength. Welcome back. Now in your business news, Sri Lanka has attracted 1.9 million tourists as of November 5th, reaching the halfway mark of its target of securing 3 million tourist arrivals for the year. This figure includes 32,815 tourist arrivals recorded between the 1st and the 5th of November. According to data from the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, the highest number of tourist arrivals for the month of November so far was recorded on the 1st with 7,412 tourists visiting the country. India continues to be Sri Lanka's top source market, with 7,830 Indian tourists visiting so far in November, while the Russian Federation trails in second with 4,421 Russian tourist arrivals. A significant number of tourist arrivals were also recorded from Germany, the United Kingdom, Australia, France and China. As the budget speech got underway, the Colombo Stock Exchange extended its positive momentum on, with the all-share price index surging 226 points to close at 23,338. Investor sentiment was buoyed by optimism surrounding the national budget, with strong activity seen in banking sector counters. Retail participation remained active, while high net worth investor activity continued at a moderate level. Market turnover reached 6.7 billion rupees, slightly below the monthly average of 7.2 billion. The banking sector led market activity, accounting for 23% of total turnover, followed by the capital goods sector and foods and beverages and tobacco sectors, which together contributed 32%. Meanwhile, foreign investors remained net sellers, recording a net outflow of 91.5 million rupees for the day. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.